Welcome to Build Out with Jim Kunkel, your go-to broadcast for learning more about business in the real world. Your host, Jim Kunkel, who is an accomplished professional in business development, sales, and marketing, and is a technical content creator along with being a rising influencer on LinkedIn. On Build Out, you'll get the latest information and knowledge from subject matter experts from across the globe. Okay, let's get this Build Out broadcast started. And here's your host, Jim Kunkel.
Welcome to Build Out. I'm Jim Kunkel, and joining me today is John Kenney from the Kenney Consulting Group. John, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm glad to be here tonight.
It's great to have you. And today we're going to be talking about good culture is good for business. And John, before we get into our conversation, could you do a favor for those who are watching? Could you cover your role, background, and talk a little bit about your firm as well?
Sure. Well, my background is in particularly roof construction. I'm actually a third generation on that side of the business. My grandfather started a business back in 1922 in the Northeast, and that's how I got into roofing. I basically like to, people have notified, they like to say that I've gone from the rooftop to the boardroom. So that's a good way to look at my background. So I've started out coming up through the ranks, worked my way into the office and all the way up into a top COO position within some, top 100 companies around the USA. So my focus is on the roofing contractor and business operations. And I was in that for about 45 years. I started in my teenage years, first in the roofing industry, all the way up to current. 2 years ago, I really decided to kind of make a change, retire from the everyday contracting world and go into consulting. So hence is where we came up with the Kenney Consulting Group. That actually started in January of 2020. Now, 2020 wasn't the best year when you look back upon it with the pandemic, but you know what? It's like anything else. You got to go for it when you're ready to go for it. So at Kenney, what we focus on is business operations. We focus on training. We're very big on training. We have a lot of online training to assist the contractors in different positions and advancement in the roofing industry. And we also work a little bit on the technology side as far as doing assessments on technology and make sure you're getting the most usage out of technology in your business.
Very good, very good. And you have some professional credentialing that I did not put on the screen here, but I will make sure that I do point that out on the broadcast. Could you cover your professional accreditations that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a licensed roofing contractor with the state of Florida. I'm also, you'll see a MIOR. I'm a member of the Institute of Roofing in Great Britain, which is very proud of doing that. That's quite an honor for an American to get into that institute. And then you see the CPRC. That means I'm a certified professional roofing contractor, which is a level up from getting your license. About you're only that goes to only a few that pass all the qualifications. So I'm very proud of that. And a couple other things is I'm also very big. I'm a member of the International Federation of Roofing over in Europe. I sit on two committees over there on waterproofing and slope, and currently working with them on writing the new recommendation manuals for best practices in roofing throughout the European community. And also, last thing I want to give a plug to, because I'm very proud of, I sit on the National Technical Committee for Roofing up in Canada. So I'm currently working with them, a group of individuals and contractors putting together the next release of their technical manual up in Canada. So I'm very proud of that as well.
Yeah, you should be very proud. I'm glad you covered that. I wanted everyone to understand your dynamic, especially on the global hemispheres that you do work and operate in. So you do have that perspective that, that is so needed when we talk about culture and things like that. Mm-hmm. What I want to do is I want to read the clinical definition of corporate and organizational culture, and then get your input and your what your perspective is on what I'm just about to read here. So the clinical definition of culture, corporate and organizational culture, is the proper way to behave within an organization. Now, the culture consists of shared beliefs and values established by leaders and then communicated and reinforced through various methods, ultimately shaping the employees' perceptions, behaviors, and understandings. That's the clinical definition. What's the John definition of culture?
Well, I like to look at, when you have a corporate or company culture, it's your foundation. I believe wholeheartedly, and I work with people on this as well. It is your statement to not only the outside world, but also your teammates, your employees, your team, of exactly where that company beliefs. And now I want to talk on core values, but I'm talking about what actually makes everything roll. And that's to me is the definition of corporate culture. That in the wide span. I know we're going to dig a little deeper into it, but really got to look at it as your foundation. You can't do anything else until you have a solid foundation, which you need a solid company culture.
Yeah, culture is something that is so important for the future growth of an organization, for a company, but also sustainability of an organization as well. So it's so critical to get that culture correct. And there's different types of organizational culture. And the first one that is something that I think is a little different today than what it was in the past, which is what's called the clan culture. It used to be a time when you worked for a company, you might be working for that company for your whole life. And so you really, in a way, became adopted to that company and you became part of that culture. We don't see a lot of that clan culture type of relationship or experience when it comes to employees and companies. But I do see a lot of that, and I'll kind of correct myself in a way. I do see that when it comes to that. There are certain industries where you might see families that have generations. Roofing, for example. I know many professionals in the roofing industry. Their fathers and grandfathers were in the industry. Their brothers are in the industries, or they might have other siblings that are in the industry as well. When it comes to a clan culture, how important do you think it is for companies to promote and to develop clan culture?
Well, I think you hit it right as far as roofing goes. I think roofing is that belonging to a clan, which is your family-like atmosphere, right? And that's what roofing is. And I know there's a lot more family-operated, owned businesses out there in the roofing industry than probably a lot of other industries, especially in the larger construction firms. But I think it's very important. I think if you look at it in the aspect of focusing on teamwork, all belonging to one, or in a high culture of mentorship, I think that falls under this as well. And I don't think there's anything any more important in any company to foster growth than have a solid mentorship program that starts at the top. The owner or owners believe in, and I think that starts to build as we know it, the clan type culture.
Very good. Yeah, it just it's interesting times we are in right now because of the way companies are. And there's different other types of hierarchies when it comes to it. I'm going to kind of skip over a couple of them because a lot of them are a little bit more what I would call rigid and not real. Fundamentally, what I would say they're not something, and at least in my opinion, that helps the future growth of companies. But one that I really find interesting is looking at market culture, and where you have kind of, for example, I work in the industrial coatings industry, and a lot of the colleagues I work with, and a lot of colleagues that I'm friends with, we have that kind of grew into working in industrial coatings. At one time, John, you don't know this about me, but I also worked in industrial roofing as well. And I see that the same thing in between both industries. It's like you get industrial roofing, it's into your blood, and you kind of become that. I made a leap from that. I got into fabrication, and I got into industrial coatings and things like that. Now coatings are kind of my lifestyle. When it comes to that type of a culture, when you're looking at like a market or an industry, what are some of the things that you see that are important to core values, let's say, of culture in industries, like, for example, with roofing?
Well, roofing is a competitive marketplace. It always has been. It always will be. I think a majority of roofing companies and owners, they're focused on growth. And when you're focusing on growth, you got to keep in mind, though, you need to focus on your profitability. And I think that falls under market culture fairly well. You're fostering a culture of competition. I mean, you're fostering it within your own company. You may not know it. You have competition within your salespeople. You have competition within your operations teams. That's what you want. You foster culture of competition to be better than where you are now and growing it. And I think, a combination of and I don't want to go into that now, going at the end, but there's a combination of these work. I think when we're going through these, I'd like people to understand out there in the audience that it's not necessarily one or none. I think you kind of can, mesh these together. But I like the market culture. I've always thrived in a competitive nature and having goals set and targets. You can't be competitive if you don't know what to hit, right? So that's why I think goals are very, very important, in your company, so that everyone knows what they are extending out and going after.
Very good, very good. So let's go ahead and move on to what does a good company culture look like. And the first thing that I'd like to point out there, at least in my mind, what a good culture looks like is long-term employees. And when you see that, if you're someone coming new, or let's say as a young professional, you're joining an organization or a company, and you see that there are long-term employees, that's a healthy sign for you. How important to a company or an organization is maintaining and sustaining long-term employees?
Well, it's important in a lot of aspects. I think one thing to talk about or discuss through a little short about it is long-term employees, long-term from what it was in, baby boomers top end to the, post-war era is different. I think the years of your 20 plus, 30 plus employees, they're there, but they're very rare. So to me, I think you got to make that distinction. What do you consider long-term? You got to almost look into your generational makeup. And I think if you've got a group that has an average core of 10 years, you've got some long-term employees. So I don't want people out there thinking, oh, well, I'm not going to, you don't come out of school and go to work for IBM anymore and retire out of there in 50 years. It's just not the way it is. And sometimes it's better to have that mix to pick people up as they progress through their career, because they're learning at other places something that you may not be teaching at your company, and that's a great mix within your culture. So I think, but that being said, let's look at it at 10 years. Why is it important? You don't want to have an extreme churn rate or turnover. Training is expensive. Constantly recruiting is expensive, even though you do need to constantly recruit to always be looking for the best talent out there. But you don't want to be recruiting to replace positions you're constantly losing. So I would say if you're in that 5 to 10 year range of holding people into your company and developing them and then moving them up the ladder within your company, you're going to start to see 15 and 20 year employees at your firm.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, too, when you look at the survivability of a company when it comes to leadership, succession, and things like that, it's a good way to kind of benchmark instead of looking for what it would be like in the baby boomers' time, or let's say earlier, probably early 20th century, mid 20th century, when people would literally come out of school or go into the trades and just work that type of job for their whole life. Now it's a little different of an environment. A younger generation works a little different, and 10 years is probably a good benchmark for a long-term employee for a company nowadays. And the next thing that I also too think is important is a friendly atmosphere, and that's not just a relationship between the colleagues, but it's also a friendly atmosphere between leadership, with management, overall the entire operation. And what I mean by friendly is more nurturing. It's about growing the company, growing the employees. Kind of let's say we're all team and work that way. When it comes to that friendly nature, how critical is it to, as leaders of companies, to develop those types of skills when it comes to, kind of, let's say, running a more friendlier company or organization?
Well, I think it's even more important today than it's ever been in the past. Again, going back to, I want everybody to realize the generational differences Once you get below the baby boomers and you start to get through even your Generation X, your millennials and your Z's and the next step coming after that, they don't react the same way as the earlier generations. And, speaking especially in the roofing industry or construction, you were used to the boot in the butt theory. That's what I always like to call it. And that's the way you were moved along. You were kicked along. You were expected to do it. There wasn't, your friendly attitude might be, good morning. What do you mean? What do you mean by good morning? No, you got to have that. You got to build that culture. And it starts also too, you want to build a friendly culture. It starts with truth and openness and honesty. Now, I'm not saying that you're sharing all your secrets with everybody that's in your company, but you've got to be transparent. To the point is, don't come out and say one thing and do another. That's a lesson that works with every generation. That's how if they know that you're open and you have an open door policy and you actually mean it, not that it has to be open where everybody just walks in at bay, but if someone needs to spend time and talk to you about something, that's part of also growing a friendly atmosphere and moving along. And again, there's nothing that will kill a business or a leader quicker than a toxic culture. And toxic is the opposite, definitely, of friendliness. So again, I think when we're talking about friendliness, I don't necessarily think anybody should look at it as that you are the most super every day. You're that outgoing, bubbly, hey, that's not what we mean. We mean have respect. A lot of it goes into being friendly. Respect, open, honesty, truthful, there when needed, and be, somebody that is not inward.
Yeah, I think what you just mentioned really kind of captures how to deal with the different generations that are currently working together. We have a mix of the baby boomers and millennials, and then we're also talking about the latest generation that's coming out of school or out of the trades right now. And it kind of leads really to the next part of a good culture, which is really the involvement. And we see the youngest generation that has just joined the workforce. They want to be part of the decision process. Now, a lot of millennials, some boomers might say, hey, that's not how business operates. But let's all be honest. Businesses moving into the future are going to have a more greater involvement across the platform, no matter who you are, what level of company you are. You're still going to have leaders making the ultimate decision, but having input across the platform is not a bad thing. What are your opinions when it comes to having involvement across the platform, no matter what level of an employee you are?
You should have, as a leader, your team around you should be the most diverse team that you can put together. It should represent all the generations, at least the generations that are within your company. It should be made up of no particular, you should have going into, if you have multiple races, multiple cultures, whatever it is, get those opinions. Because you're marketing, you're selling to, or you're going to business, you're not going to business against yourself, right? You're probably selling to people that are less like you, because that's the way our country's made up. We have multiple cultures, multiple business decisions made in different areas. I always like to get the opinions. Now, you take the opinions and then you have to put them all, I call that mix-up bag, right? You put them all in there, you listen to it, and then make your decision based upon all that information. You will always make a better decision listening to a group of people with your company than you will sitting in a room or with one or two people, that give you information to make that decision. I will tell you right now, I have always felt that I want to get as much information as I can. And I like people around me especially when I was running the construction end of it. I want people around me that are better than me, that are smarter than me, know other things that I don't know. That's what a true leader is. Take all that and then make your decision from it.
Yeah, I like that. That's a very good point you just made there. And the other thing too is I do think when you have that diversity of opinion and also thought that could go into making a decision, it's always good for the organization. And I think it's also good to show the entire employees team that as a leader you do care about what they have to say and you do appreciate the contributions that they are giving on a daily basis for
Sure.
the company. The other thing that the next thing that I would say is extremely important for the culture of an organization, a company, is a clear mission and clear values. And in the past, I've worked for companies and organizations that the mission would sometimes seem to change. The visions most of the time would stay about the same, but the mission always seemed to change, and it was more fluid. And I can understand in some companies and some organizations in different markets, you might need to have an evolving mission. But how critical is it when it comes to a company to have that clear vision and also to the mission and the values?
Oh, it's extremely critical. I will tell you, there's a few errors that are made almost always when they're putting these together. One is core values. I've worked with people that have 30 core values. You can't have 30 core values. You may want to, but you need to put them in priority. What are your top 3? What are your top 5, right? That really are the core values of your company, whether it's truth, family, whatever it may be, that is your top. And the mission and vision statements that I found are so complicated and long that no one outside of the person who put that together even understands what it is. So what needs to happen is it needs to be clear, right? Have that. Your mission and your vision honestly should only be a couple sentences to get that across. But once you get that all mapped out and done, everyone in your company needs to know what your core values are, what your vision is, and what your mission is. Now, the reason that's important is because I've worked with companies now, and I can go and sit with the owner, and we'll be talking, and maybe 2 of the top management, and they'll be able to tell me, yeah, here's our core values, this is what our vision is, and here's what our mission is. I said, great, let's go talk to the rest of the staff, and then more importantly, especially if you do this like at a safety meeting or a forum meeting, let's talk to the field staff and see what they know. They have no idea. They have no idea what the core values are of the company. They'll guess, you'll get it from everywhere. And more importantly, they don't even know what the vision and the mission is. So every single person, all the way down to the newest hire, should know your core values, your mission, and your vision statement. And that's all part of a great onboarding process that you need to work on. So to kind of just sum that up a little bit, because I covered a lot there, have, your core values, keep them down to a minimal so that everyone can understand them. No one's going to remember a dozen. Maybe top 3, I always recommend, is good. And then have your vision and mission statement short, precise, and to the point, and live by it, and then educate everyone within your company.
Very good, very good. Now, earlier in this part of our conversation, you had mentioned about diversity. How important is diversity today?
I think diversity is extremely important, not because A, it's the right thing to do, or B, the government tells you should do it. And I wanted to clarify that. The reason diversity is extremely important is you need to build a workforce. There is not a workforce out there available. So if you're limiting yourself to only hiring out of one hiring pool, you're not going to have a very a good workforce, or even a workforce at all. But more importantly, once you get the diverse force, like I work big with the women in roofing. I'm on some committees. I've been a member since the founding, and I really enjoy working with them. And that is the greatest resource that we have in the roofing industry, is tapping in to the female workforce that's out there. It's a huge tap market. Same way with working with the diversity accountants, with the Hispanics and other minority groups. You got to embrace it and bring it in. And I'll also tell you, a company always, in my mind, and what I've seen, works so much better if they really embrace the diversity. And when you really embrace the diversity, it's not just hiring, saying, oh, I got 2 women this week, I hired this minority group. No, it's once you get them in, elevate them up in your company and get them into positions that you can benefit. So this is the key. You're benefiting from getting them in positions by getting the knowledge that they will bring and the experiences that they will bring that you don't have.
Yeah, I like that aspect of, the infusion of knowledge and really different perspectives. but also too in the element of, let's think about it with the roofing industry or with industrial coatings. We view that as a heavily male-dominated type of industries. But when you have a diversity, now all of a sudden women can be roofers, women can be blasters and painters. You have this opportunity now when it comes for recruitment, in addition to what you're talking about, really kind of enhancing the capabilities and the abilities of a company because of a diversity of beliefs, understanding, and knowledge. So even for the recruitment aspect of it, it's huge when you embrace a diversity for companies and organizations. Let's talk about some of the softer sides of culture. One thing that comes to mind is celebrating wins. A lot of companies have very unique ways of celebrating good business. A friend, a past associate of mine, a friend of mine worked for Google Corporation. And, he was always talking about when they would have a certain type of milestones that they would hit. They would have theme parties, they would have celebrations, they would have events and things like that. When it comes to celebrating wins and having corporate events or, let's say, team building activities, what are some of the recommendations that you might offer out there to the viewers if they're thinking of incorporating some type of good programs when it comes to celebrating wins and things?
Yeah, so celebrate a win doesn't always have to be a big event, right?
I guess true.
A lot of times, I'll give you an example. I've been throughout companies where every time that we signed a contract for a new roofing project, we rang the bell. We had a bell hanging on the wall, and we rang it, and everybody was excited because they knew a new job came in. So that was a celebration of the win. I think even if you get into the habit of having a your human resource department or whoever's in charge of your programs like that, get into having a monthly luncheon. Make sure that you also celebrate with your field teams as well. What I used to like to do is have our safety meetings in the morning, and every once in a while mix it up and have a safety meeting in the afternoon and shut the jobs down early. Bring in and have barbecue or whatever the mission, whatever the food choice of the day was, and bring all the team together, and then also bring the office staff out at the same time to celebrate with your field. So again, then you can have your bigger ones, like maybe a quarter. If you're doing really well on a quarterly, you do an outside function, or holiday time, you do it. But don't only have it for management or one part of your company. Embrace everybody, and it's not that expensive to do the smaller stuff earlier. Like I said, have the safety meetings, bring everybody in. I know a company I'm friends with up in Pennsylvania area. They have their Friday safety meetings every Friday, and the office staff, they cook different meals. Like they'll have pancakes, they'll have biscuits and gravy, and it gets everybody involved. Well, that starts to celebrate the wins, right? You're celebrating safety, because in our industry, safety is a huge win, right? So I'd say that it doesn't have to be big every time, but make sure everybody's included.
Yeah, that human experience is super critical, and it's so beneficial for the sustainability of a company or an organization. The other another human aspect of it is when you're looking at leadership. You as a CEO or anyone who might be an owner or running a company or organization, we always hear the word open door policy, and I think it's important for leadership to be open and also be involved. In other words, kind of be there to have people on the teams come talk with them, and share opportunities to communicate and talk and have one-on-one communication, no matter what level you are in a company. What can leaders get from that type of activity, John?
Well, the best thing you do, and it's still the adage today, right? If you're a factory and you're making something out on the factory floor and you're trying to be better at it or trying to improve the process or whatever it is, you don't find it out by talking to the supervisor. You get out on the floor and you talk to the actual people that are doing it. So in any company, you want to make sure an open door policy, to me, and I have to laugh at that a little bit. It always drove me crazy when people always said, I have an open door policy, and then you could never get to talk to them, right? So, again, that's just kind of a phrase. So if you're going to have it, again, don't just talk the talk, walk the walk. So one of the things that I like to do that worked well for me is constantly rotate around to the different offices when I was in charge of multiple branches with a company, and be able to, they know I'd be there on safety day. They know I would be there on, alternate from when we had operational meetings, whatever it was. That was when I would do the open door policy, right? They would know at that time I would want to hear from them, and I would make the time to even come in early to catch the field workers as they were going out. They knew they could just, hey, John, how you doing? Did you think of this, or did you look into this, or I'm having this type of problem? You will get more out of your team if they know you actually care. They don't expect you to act on everything they tell you, that they don't. But the point is, what they do respect is the fact that they know you're listening to everything that they have to say. So we have, 2 ears, 1 mouth, do the same thing as a leader, listen, talk less, and things will really move very well for you.
It's so true, so true. The next topic I'm going to cover with you here related, and really I think this was something that was proved out through the pandemic, is comfortable workplaces. And we have kind of wound up in 2020 going from working in an office to working in the home office, and that totally changed a lot of ways of companies operating. Even still today, many companies are not back fully into an office, and a lot of them are probably going to continue to work with more remote workers. And what I was amazed with, a lot of people kept saying, if you're not going in an office, boy, the productivity is going to drop. Businesses are going to go belly up. This is the worst thing that could happen, having a shutdown like this. And we did not see a major interruption. We didn't see any type of a big issue when it came to productivity and the workability of employees that had to work remote. Your experience through the pandemic, working with clients who had a lot of remote work, and I realize if you're an industrial roofer or you're a roofer, you're still putting roofs on commercial buildings, industrial buildings, and residential buildings. So you're still working in the field. But how did that transition help businesses, in your opinion?
Well, I think you have to embrace the remote working, right? And you brought up a great point. Yes, there are certain positions in our industry, just like flexible hours. You can't have it. You can't have flexible hours on a crew. What I mean by that is a crew is a crew. Everyone has to show up at the same time. You have to work the same time, or you don't get production. There are positions in the roofing industry that you want to embrace the hybridness or the ability to work at home, because you're going to increase your talent pool. Let's use an example of an estimator. So I'm a company in Florida, and I really can't find any good estimators in Florida, but I have a lead on somebody from Wisconsin that is going to be a perfect fit for my company, but they do not want to move to Florida. They happen to love living where they're at. So you have to make a decision. Are you going to be old school and stick to that and say, no, I'm sorry, you have to move to Florida, I'm not going to hire you? Or are you going to test the new waters out there and see if it works? Because one thing I can tell you about the working from home and the productivity and non-productivity, you can set up systems in your company, and I've worked with companies doing this, where if someone's working. And I don't mean monitoring software, catching every keystroke. There's just key ways of doing it by knowing what the output should be and what output you're getting. And I will also go one step further, that if you have probably, I would say at least 90% of the time, if you have an employee working at home that is goofing off, lack of a better term, they're probably going to goof off at work too. The only difference is they're going to have to be different how they do it. You either have a productive employee or a non-productive employee. People don't go from productive to non-productive because they're working. And also, too, have a hybrid situation. Maybe Monday and Fridays at home works great for them, or a Wednesday off, and then they come in the office, 50% of the time. You need that. Again, embrace it. And I also, one step further, we worked with in the pandemic. I think also hybrid safety meetings started being held with Zoom, started being held with FaceTime from the job site to the office, because it wasn't able to bring everybody into one gathering place. So again, check into the stuff. Sometimes you may still want to hold some of these hybrid meetings because you're not wasting everyone's time to come in. And you want to mix them up because you still want the camaraderie. So I think in the construction industry, probably it is a mix of both models can work very well. It won't work for every position, but don't be closed-minded to the fact that there is a good model out there that may work for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Don't be closed-minded. Now, the next topic, again, would be, I think, is something that I don't always like to be involved with or be around is the aspect of, office politics. That can be, it can really kind of break an organization or a company when you start to have some, maybe let's call it backstabbing going on, or if you got, different type of, we'll call them, tribes that form, and there's opinion tribes that form within a company. How damaging can office politics be to a company culture, John?
Oh, it'll eventually destroy your company. If nothing else, it will force good people to leave, and you will end up with a completely toxic environment. I've seen it happen. So your job as a leader in any company, whether you're middle management, the upper management, you can't let this foster. You have to always nip it in the bud, and you can't show favoritism when this happens. So if you have the most productive employee and they are also the single most toxic employee and they're chasing people out your door, you got to really, you got to look at this from the big picture. You're probably better off not having that employee, and then you are making excuses because it's too hard to rebuild. I've seen it, especially, let's just look at estimating, sales, and operations in a roofing company. They're like brothers and sisters, cats and dogs. They historically do not get along. Operations never makes a mistake. Estimating never makes a mistake. It's always someone else's. So one of the biggest challenges that I had as COO, and then throw a service department in there, the repair and maintenance, and you got a triangle. Your job is to bring them together and get them to start working as a cohesive unit, and you can do it. Because again, if it comes down to openness, truthfulness, and having these meetings saying this is not acceptable, and don't use these meetings to point out someone's bad behavior, saying, look, we're fostering this culture and we're moving in this direction. That is not acceptable. This is where we need to be. This is what I expect out of everyone, and start to work in that direction. And then, unfortunately, if you have people on your team that will not do what needs to be done, you're going to have to make that hard decision and cut the ones that are not, moving into going all the way back to our company culture, right? That's what we're talking about. Cut the ones that don't fit. You have to.
Very good, very good. For the final aspect of a good company organizational culture is professional development. I myself have benefited from professional development where I earned a master's degree, and it really benefited the company at the time that did cover my master's degree. And then ultimately, as I did progress in my career and move into other opportunities, that knowledge and experience that I gained from my master's really helped me benefit working at those other companies and organizations as well. A lot of companies invest in professional development. Are companies doing enough when it comes to professional development, John?
I think some are, but I think the majority still are not. I work with a lot of different, size companies from, $1 million range up to multi-million dollar. And so that's not the key. I find I have companies that are not huge in revenue, but they're huge in professional development. I have companies that are very large in revenue, and they have some of the most awful professional development programs, if they even have it, that I've seen. So again, you want to have this, and it's more than just training. It starts from your onboarding and cross-training and having movement within your company. And you can't be afraid that someone may get to a point of their professional career that you can't, say, support them within your organization anymore, and they have to move on. It happens. Don't let that stop you from developing somebody, right? Let's face it, if you get somebody that's elevated up and they should be a vice president in your company, but you have no room for vice presidents. Don't hold them back. Develop them into that, and then they'll probably stay anyways, knowing there's a career path. But also, it works both ways on professional development. Really breed the culture that is there to find the ones who want to be professionally developed as well, and that's a key. I'll give you an example. In my early career, I read a book every month. I made sure I read 2 books to either self-improvement or, improvement into my business life, right? And then other things. You have to do that because I wanted to learn. You can have the greatest systems in the world, but if people don't have the desire to learn, it's not going to do any good. So again, don't stop somebody that is at the lower end of your company that has a huge desire to move up in your company, but you don't have a place for them. Work them in the system, develop them. Yeah,
I like that approach. That's a very good approach, not only for the employee, but also ultimately it could be a great move for the company. You never know. There's a lot of stories of people who started, let's say, at the bottom of a company or a corporation, and then they rise up the ranks and ultimately become either the ultimate leader or an influential, important leader. So you never know who that person might be. So it's always good to cultivate that and support it, and also help promote that as well. Mm-hmm. John, to kind of close out our conversation, I'm going to go through a 5 workplace culture trends for 2022. I'm going to go through just real quickly the 5 trends, and then get your opinion on what you see for 2022, maybe even going into 2023. But where I picked this up was a blog from O.C. Tanner, and it was a response to the current struggle by American employers that are really struggling to find talent. The first thing that O.C. Tanner pointed out is what trends are. The first is flexibility, and that involves with remote working employees, having the involvement in executive decisions, more collaboration and things like that. The second is prioritization of employee mental and emotional health. Number 3, emphasis on personalized performance management. Number 4, workplace transparency. And number 5, focus on employee feedback. Those are important trends that O.C. Tanner had pointed out. Is there anything maybe that you would want to add to that, or is there anything that you would want to kind of expand on these trends?
Well, I think, flexibility, we talked a little bit about that. You have to have it. Companies a lot of them are going back to, no, I have no flexibility. It's 8 to 5. And again, it doesn't necessarily, I get it. If you're in the construction side, your crews are the least most flexible you can be, but they understand that, right? But also, too, you can be a little flexible if someone needs a day off, that they can have the ability to come talk to their immediate supervisor and pre-plan this so it doesn't mess the whole crew, so they're not alienated if they have to take time off for family, right? So you want to, get that's part of flexibility. I think jumping ahead to some of the other ones, I think feedback is extremely important. I know I found through most companies that employees never really get true feedback. So your once a year evaluation, that is really not feedback. That is something that companies require and an employee expects. Nothing really great comes out of an employee review. I'll tell you right now, I've done a ton of them. I much rather have the ability to sit with my employees at different stages of as they're progressing and give them actual feedback on a project they're working on, feedback on how they're doing, progressing with goal standards that I've given them, right? That's feedback. That will get it going. So don't live on your once a year review. It doesn't. It's something you do. And then what was the other one was what was another one we had there? The flexibility. Prioritizing mental and emotional health. That's big today. And I can tell you, speaking as a baby boomer, we had no emotional or mental health, and that including growing up. So if you're a baby boomer, you know that. And honestly, most exes didn't either. They were thrown into the same batch. Yeah, you don't cry, your feelings and all that. But we're not that way anymore, okay? You're dealing with multiple generations. So again, I was on a panel listening the other day on the roofing industry about how many construction is one of the highest suicide rates in any industry in our nation. So look at this. You got to have the signs. You want to have a wellness program. That's, you have an outage. Somebody can seek counseling if need be. Again, it's hard to get employees, as you just stated. So the more that you can do to make their experience better, I don't want you looking at it as, well, I'm doing all these great things and I'm not getting anything out of it. No, you will. What you're going to get out of it is having the number one best company around, and you will make money, and that's what we're all in it for. But you've got to give before you get. That's just the way it is.
That's a very good point. John, what a great conversation we've had on this episode. Is there, in closing, is there anything that we didn't talk about you'd want to leave with the viewers?
Well, I think we covered a lot here today. Mm-hmm. I think the greatest takeaway, if anybody, hears this and they want to go back, and I'm sure they can replay it. I know on YouTube you have the replays. Learn the importance of building your own company culture. And again, it's not a buzzword about having it. Really consider it your foundation. It's just like building your family. Your family will not survive unless you have strong values that everybody knows about and lives by. And it's the same way in your company.
So true, so true. How can people get in contact with you? Website, social media, other platforms?
Well, if you want to email me, that's easy. It's jkenney, with the Kenney, at cottoneyconsultinggroup.com. If you're a fan of LinkedIn, which I know most people in business are, please go hook up with me on my profile. I have a lot of followers. I post a lot of stuff on there. You can get me through Messenger on there. I've always replied. And the website is cottoneyconsulting.com. Check us out. And, we're here. I love to talk to people, and I will never turn anybody away just if they want to have a free conversation of advice. That's what I'm here for.
Well, John, they're going to have a great conversation with you, and I so greatly appreciate having you on my broadcast as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it very much.
Okay, have a great day.
You too.
I hope you found value with today's Build Out broadcast. Make sure you connect with Jim on LinkedIn and subscribe to his YouTube channel. This way you'll be notified on new live streams and when new content is released. Please give today's broadcast a like and share with your connections and colleagues. Thanks for watching, and please visit buildoutproductions.com for additional content and to join the mailing list so you can keep updated on other streams and quality content from the creators on the Build Out Productions team.